V-Tour. I believe we've got 3 more sessions, and we are absolutely delighted to once again host a good friend and percussionist, Joe Pereira. Joe, welcome to WPG again. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Yeah, I know it's been a while. We must catch up sometime. But apparently you're coming to London soon, so hopefully we can meet up then.
Yeah,
cool. All right, so we're going to bring on our first artist of the day. David Fernandez is going to be coming in from Venezuela. So, David, how you doing, buddy? Okay.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Very fine.
So, you know the drill now. So, if you want to just tell Joe a little bit about yourself and where you're from, he'll be probably really interested in that as well. And then what you're going to play.
Okay. Well, I'm David Fernandez. I'm percussionist from Venezuela. I'm currently living in Caracas. I'm percussionist at the Juan José Landaeta Symphony Orchestra, and there I play as timpani sometimes as well. And I'm member of the Catatumbo Percussion Ensemble too. I will play the Kruger Etude number 45.
okay. Yeah, really good, great. Um, I like the performance a lot. A few things maybe
Okay.
to think about. I know this is not so much in the U.S., but I know in other countries this is a big kind of audition piece, right? You asked at auditions a lot for orchestra auditions, maybe at schools too. Um, so it's pretty popular. Um, I always feel like when you, I always feel like sometimes the students and players when they uh, play something like this for an audition, they have the mentality of like, oh, okay, this is a certain kind of piece, so I have to play it, very very nice and clean and neat because it's for an audition. I have to be very careful and play it a certain way. And then I play a concert or a recital, and I really show a lot of style and character. So it's very
Okay.
separate mentality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that? I always
Yeah.
feel like,
Of course.
not that you did that, but I just want to make a point that um, I always feel like no matter what you're playing, maybe always think about it like a recital, like you're playing a recital concert or something. So you're always showing your personality and your own character. You're making it really unique to your playing.
Okay.
That's how I always think about playing, even these pieces that are kind of standard. And you always have to imagine too, like people like me that are the older people on the other side listening all the time, we hear it all the time. These common audition pieces. So if you can do something that's specific to you, your unique sound, then it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting, and it makes us really want to hear more of your playing, and makes you successful in whatever audition you're taking, I think. So that's the first thing. The other thing, I like that you're really, very relaxed, because you're always going to get the best sound out of any percussion instrument, not only timpani.
Okay.
If your technique, when you're actually striking the drum, there's no tension, there's no tightness. Okay. So you have a very good relaxed motion. But I do think that you can work a little bit on, I'll try to show you in a second, but I think basically in this piece, it's a very simple idea where you're moving around the drums. But I also think, I noticed your arms are a little bit, play one drum, play the next drum, play the next drum. It's a little bit okay. Too vertical, especially if okay. you're thinking like a musical line where it goes, so, do, re, mi, just those four notes, let's say, right? The movement is also flows, not only playing the drum to get the sound, of course you have to be vertical to hit the drum, but that connection, like think about like bow on violin, right? Playing many notes, but all one sound. So I think a little bit more of this fluidity around. Think about this more, because you're already relaxed. So don't stop when you go down, and keep it in the straight path. So let's see if I can show you a little bit. Hopefully, yeah, this will be okay. So close enough. So I mean this. So basically, what I'm saying is, when you make contact, watch without the stick. When the rebound, it moves already to the next drum. I think this will make this a lot more smoother, as opposed to right. It's too up and down. So the combination of up and down plus this movement. So I'm always thinking about where I'm after I play the note, where I'm going next. All of this is kind of, I guess, we think more fluid, more part of the music life. Me, I think that's really. And the other thing is, sometimes, a lot of times, I feel like maybe the rolls are a little bit too slow. It almost sounds like a rhythm, and I always think myself, I always try to roll. Actually, I don't want to muffle the pitch of the drum, but not too slow where you start to hear the stick, the rhythm of the stick. Basically, the rule is the rule, right? One continuous sound. So, kind of ironic, the ball will actually muffle the drum. Not, we have to recreate the long tone. So, about
All right, Joe, just are you with me? Can you come closer to your laptop, because you're just losing the sound a little bit.
Yeah.
You weren't hearing that?
I think when you're playing the drum, it's trying to like EQ the level. So then when you're talking, it's really quiet. So maybe just air drum or something. I don't know.
I won't do that. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if did you understand any of that? Was it did it all get cut out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's basically it. You're trying to create these long tones, and of course, different drums like the different tension of the head. You adjust the roll speed. So there's two things. There's the you have to consider if you're playing a big bass drum, right? That's really low and loose head. Of course, you can roll really slow. If you're playing on like a low E on low timpani, you can roll a lot slower than a high note because the tension is tighter, right? So you have to hide the strokes by rolling faster. Also, dynamically, I think, and again, this relates to the other instruments, the way they produce sound. When you have to do a roll that's soft, you don't have to roll super fast, right? Because which one looks soft without hearing any sound, this or this, right? I mean, it's a pretty simple concept. If you're going too fast, it's gonna have this like nervous energy that's gonna be too loud sounding. The color is too loud. Think about it as a color; it's too loud. So slowing it down, just like a wind player, right? When they play something soft, it's like slower air, less air, but as opposed to something that's really, big. It's a lot of air fast. So I think about it that way with my rolls. As far as the color of the sound, also makes the pitch a lot clearer coming out of the drum. The other one more little thing. I really feel that timpani are meant to be played sitting down, especially when you play on cap, because the tuning changes a lot, or it can change a lot depending on your climate you're in, or situation. So, like when you got to the end, I feel like the C got a little bit low by the end.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting down, like when I'm playing, my feet are on the pedal. I'm always adjusting, all the time to keep it in tune. And I know some people don't like to sit down when they play solo pieces because they feel like they can't move. I think just find the right position of the stool, position of the drums, so you can reach everything comfortably without it being kind of uncomfortable. Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically it. It's very good.
Cool. David, you've got some time for some questions if you want.
Yeah. Well, one of the questions was that I wanted to ask about that playing standing up or sitting, the difference, the feeling of playing seated or straight. Uh, I hear different opinions about, and I wanted to know your opinion in the case, for example, of Renaissance skin, no, not calf, for example, that the tune are more precise and more it stays at the time. If it's good to play straight, or maybe straight, it's not the word,
Standing
uh,
up.
yeah, standing up, sorry, or if you think that it's always better to play seated. uh,
Yeah, I always sit. I mean, but in my
okay.
in my career, I didn't always sit down because when I was first in a neuroharmonic, my teacher was a timpani player and he was standing up because his teacher was standing up. Saul Goodman, but Goodman was also a really short guy. Apparently, I didn't know him; it's before my time, but apparently, really short guy. So I guess physically, if sitting down just doesn't work, then usually for people that are very short, uh, I guess stand up is easier, standing up. But I still think there's a way to adjust the seating position so you can sit because I really feel like even with the plastic heads, which I did play. I played last night. I played all year on these drums you saw in our concert hall, the cap heads, and I also play on goatee heads and my Vienna drums. In Vienna, I have small drums for early classical period. But in the summertime, we were playing outside, so I'm using plastic heads. Like last night, we played Verdi Requiem, and um, even that, it's plastic head, and people think, oh yeah, plastic is very stable, doesn't move, pitch doesn't change. But when you're playing, depending again, the weather still affects a little bit pitch. The pitch of the orchestra changes all the time. Throughout the concert, some people play a little bit lower, go sharper. So I have to adjust still. And also a piece like the Verdi Requiem, I'm playing like, especially with Gustavo, I'm playing like really big. It's like it's a lot of fun, but it's huge. And after the big spots, I have to check, and yeah, maybe it pitches a little bit lower, so I have to change, or maybe while I'm playing, I have to adjust my foot a little bit. So I think sitting, for me, I think that the timpani are meant to be tuned the whole time. Like this kind of mentality of, oh yeah, I tune the drums and now it's good. I leave it for the whole concert, it doesn't move, it's fine. I don't think
Yeah.
it's true. Like you always see like, I know my wife's violin player always like they always are super sensitive of the pitch, like always changing, adjusting. Trumpet players always with their pinky, they're moving this little valve to adjust just a little
Yeah.
bit the pitch all the time. I think we have to do the same thing. We always are sitting
Okay.
to adjust. But I mean, I can suggest, you're sitting, because I see some people that do sit down. Sometimes they sit too high, and this is a little bit uncomfortable too. I don't think you should sit too low. I think generally my rule is like your hip should be uh, maybe just above the counter hoop. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
this hoop. I'll go back again,
Yeah.
but I won't play. Hopefully you can still hear me. So okay, so I sit like about here. So my this part is maybe just above here because and maybe a little bit different for people have different torso, height. But like basically when I come down, I want my hand to be in this position, not if I sit too high, then my hand
Okay.
is here. And this is kind of muffling. This will muffle the drum, this angle. It's like dead stroke almost. And too low, of course, I don't want to be hitting because then I hit the rim or so I think this angle is good for just being here. Just like you would play marimba, snare drum, when you make the contact with the drum, the angle is just a little bit below flat. I think that's the best sound, also the best for the mallet to come back quicker. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. The question was mostly around playing solo the timpani. For orchestra, I think it's necessary to be seated, but it was mostly focused on solo performance, as the Dizet Etude, for example. But that answered very well my question. I have another question,
Yeah.
more around or in orchestral playing context. Uh, I saw and I listened to many opinions about the how to end, how to strike the end of a roll. I hear people that cut the roll a little bit before the 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 final note. Some people connect absolutely the roll. I don't know how you think that kind of end in the roll, if you cut it or if you do it differently as what you need in every piece. I don't know.
So just so I understand the question, you're asking about like
Okay.
if you're doing a roll and then you have an ending note.
Yeah. Yeah. exactly?
It depends. I
Okay.
definitely don't. I definitely can tell you, you don't have to be concerned about rolling until the very last millisecond and then playing a note. You know,
Okay.
it, the drum, you play the drum, especially if you're rolling loud, the drum still, after you play it, still sounds the same volume for 1 second and then it goes down. So I think the most important thing, especially if you have a rhythmical something passage that's rhythmical, where you have to start with the brass, let's say, and you end strong with the brass. That's the most important thing, you know. So I'm thinking about just rolling and then uh, having just enough time for lifting before and then playing that last note. It's enough. You don't. I know there's a little bit of people get worried about I have to, I have all this space between start and end, and I have to make fill it all the way until the very end. No, but generally no.
Okay.
I think again, focus on. I almost think about like that last stroke is part of the roll, but I have enough time to just lift it higher to play the last note. That's it.
Okay.
Like if you were to sing it, right? If you were to sing a long tone and a note, not tied, just two notes. So, bum. If you listen to that carefully, there's a little space, right? Bum, bum. It's hard to go. It's a little bit unnatural, I think. You know. Um,
Okay.
Sometimes I have a little trick. Sometimes if this happens in the orchestra a lot, as you probably know, like you're playing something slow, like slow movement, something slow or soft, and you know you feel it slowing down. It's not a very clear time, right? Conductors, especially, conductor does this, and then if they do this, and then that's the last note. It's like a little bit scary sometimes. Sometimes in a situation like that, I will uh, try to think, okay, try to time when it's coming. But sometimes I put two two left hands like a bomb to fill in a little bit so there's not such a big space. Try that
Okay.
sometime. You know, when there's a little bit
Okay.
double
Yeah.
stroke to connect it sometimes helps a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, especially when
Okay.
you're rolling really slow, like it's really soft and it's maybe on a lower drum too, like Bruckner, Mahler, when it's a low, like a low note, you're rolling and then blah, blah, blah. It just seems to connect a little bit better. Also gives you some
Okay.
time so you're not rolling. You're waiting and sure when to play. It kind of fills it in a little bit. Yeah. But I
Okay.
should mention to you the start of the roll is really important. I think too. I noticed that because especially like in the etude, again, if you like a trumpet player played this Kruger number 45, right? They played it on the trumpet. When they have this, they have a certain rhythm, and then there's a long tone of the roll. Just keep in mind the way any instrument would play it. The start of the roll has the same sound as the rhythms you played before. There's a tendency
Okay.
for timpani players to play. You're playing the rhythm, and you get to the roll, you have bum 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 wah, as opposed to bum 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 ba. So
Okay.
the rule is,
Yeah.
as long as didn't change. If the dynamic was the same, let's say it's the same dynamic, the start of the roll is the same sound as the previous rhythm. So maybe one time when you're practicing it, uh, instead of playing the roll, just play the first note of the roll and see the same sound, because that makes your rhythm
Okay.
also really strong. Because think about if you're listening to somebody play and they're playing a rhythm, and all of a sudden the roll you're going along, bum 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 bum, blah, 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 blah. It's like, what happened to where's the time? You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that's the way other instruments approach. It's a very clear start to the sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, there is a more specific question about
Mm-hmm.
the fantastic symphony from Berlioz, the fourth
Mm-hmm.
movement. We will play it in 2 weeks. So I want to ask, how do you approach this passage of the fourth movement at the beginning?
Yeah.
How did you approach it? How did you abort it? What kind of mallet do you prefer to use? About the striking, sticking. Sorry, about the
Yeah.
sticking. I, I I have many people telling me like, you can use this one. You can use this one. May play the first note more at the center, or all the notes more at the center. There are so much opinions about that
Yeah.
passage, so I want to hear about you
Yeah. It's a good question.
about that.
It's a little bit confusing because, well, first of all, depending on the
Okay,
conductor, they're going to tell you what to do. Some of them have very strong opinion about this.
okay,
Some of them, some conductors, I feel, are completely wrong about the tempo that they pick because
okay,
you see it in the part and in the score. Berlioz, he puts his note. He says to play it with one hand, right?
yeah,
Play the sixth
one hand,
couplet with one hand, which we never
yeah,
do unless the conductor asks us. We never do it, but I think that really informs us on the tempo, right? I mean, unless Berlioz, you know, knew somebody like Dave Weckl who was playing everything like really fast with one hand, I doubt it. You know, um,
okay,
so I think if you can imagine with one hand, that's probably the fastest. It sounds good and clear. And once in a while, conductor tells us, "Oh, I want you to play with one hand." Like, okay, fine, but then they have to do that tempo, right? But something like I
okay,
just was coaching in a music students in a festival, and the conductor and he did it very fast. So he obviously didn't even see this note or consider it, but whatever. So you always do it to conductor. And he also asked for soft stick, which Berlioz did write sponge mallet, but as you know,
yeah,
if you use the felt stick, it's not especially the second player if you're playing the G, right? The lower note, it's not going to be clear, especially in most
yeah,
concert halls. So, um, in general, we always use like a leather stick. You know what I mean by that? It's like a flannel style, but it's leather diff,
yeah,
so it's a little bit harder. Um, and depending if the conductor says, "Oh, it's not clear," then I use like my older leather stick, which is almost like wood, it's very hard now. Just if they
okay,
want it harder, then do that. I know Berlioz writes sponge, and then later in the movement he writes with the wooden mallet. So yeah, maybe you have to make a difference, but sometimes depending on the conductor, you just have to be very clear. Um, so
of course,
we generally
yeah,
go harder. Just we start harder and see what they say. And usually they say even harder or it's good most of the time. I've almost never
okay,
had a conductor ask for softer for that spot. They want to hear the rhythm. The the grace note, the flam, it should always be very
yeah,
almost the same time. It's very heavy, right? It should
okay,
be almost together. Yeah. So and I again I just like alternate, not with one hand.
yeah,
Again, unless they ask
yeah,
for it. Yeah.
okay,
That's generally what we do.
okay,
Yeah.
All right. I think time is up. Thank you, David. Great job.
Yeah.
Nice one. Oh, he's gone. I didn't actually do that. Bye, David. It's like we've got to show the weakest link in England. You heard of that?
Yeah.
If you don't know the answer, like off.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to move to I Cheng now. Hey, I Cheng.
Okay. Hi.
Hello, I'm Yiching. Yeah, so I'm originally from Macau. So I studied my bachelor degree at University of North Texas, and I currently graduate with a master degree at Wichita State University, and I play some gig with Wichita Symphony Orchestra. So today I'm presenting my video of Dance on Luna by Alex Ofali, and I just hope you could give me some comments and advices.
Sure. Yeah, great,
Cool.
very good.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, I know Alex Orfali. We were students together at the PMF Music Festival in Japan a long time
Mhm.
ago, and I'm actually going there next week to teach there. Um,
Cool.
but yeah, great performance. Did you do that for a recital?
Yeah, it's my recent recital. It's my graduate recital. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, good. Um, so yeah, just a few little like the performance is very good. There's not much to say about that. It's just uh, technique a little bit we could talk about. Just how to like maybe how to a few little things to get a little better sound maybe, and
Right.
uh, technical things like the main thing. The main thing I noticed is like when your stroke when you're hitting the drum. A lot of the it's almost like your elbow becomes your wrist a lot of the time. You know what
Hmm.
I mean by that? So instead of
Yeah.
this being relaxed, this is not moving as much, and this is moving a lot here, this joint.
Hmm.
So what
Hmm.
happens is, you see what happens to the stick, it becomes a lot longer and heavier. And then
Uh-huh.
that does not want to rebound as easily off the drum. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like a heavier, and I use that for some things. I want like a really dark sound. I'll feel the weight of my arm playing into the drum a little bit more. But I think in general, you want to have more of this motion happening a lot of the time when
Hmm.
you're playing, because what it does is it's going to come off the head a little bit easier, but it's also going to make the pitches speak a little bit cleaner
Right.
and clearer. Um,
Hmm.
were those Goodman timpani? Looks like
Yeah.
it. Wow,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
wow, yeah. I haven't seen those in a long time.
Right.
Except when I was playing, because they were the timpani of New York Phil forever. Um, and when I played on those the first until my teacher retired. But the real Goodman timpani made the ones that were made by Saul Goodman were two pedal drums, and the outside drums were by hand chained.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so um, I know Arnie Lang, who he was my predecessor. He was mostly the cymbal player, but he took over the Goodman timpani and he started making those. Those look like maybe
Mhm.
those were Lang. Arnie Lang made those Goodman timpanis. Then he started making a little more modern
Mhm.
four pedals, which is a little bit easier for these days for playing contemporary music.
Cool.
But yeah, I um, think about that. Experiment with that. Just
Mhm.
throw the stick at the drum really loose. Let this snap happen. It's the same motion as like when you bounce a ball, right? You
Right.
don't bounce a ball like this or throw something. You don't throw it like this. It's stiff here.
Yeah.
There's always this little relaxation, and
Mhm.
also most importantly, there's a snap at the end that always happens naturally when you throw it down.
Uh-huh.
I think it's the same thing for timpani because that's what again you have this surface of the drum, and you want it to speak.
Mhm.
Really.
Right.
I want to say, let's say immediately. You want to speak immediately because you do something you expect it to happen right away. So you don't kind
Mhm.
of like want to play the drum and then it might happen over here, or it might happen later. Then your rhythm sounds funny, which it doesn't. But I'm just making a point of when you do something that snap gives you
Mhm.
the best tone out of the drum,
Uh-huh.
clearest pitch and sound.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I think this goes for any instrument. The more relaxed you can be with the tension, in this case, in your arm and your hand, the more relaxed you can be, also the better the drum's going to sound. Um,
Okay.
Especially when you're playing in a group, you don't want it to get kind of covered up by all the sounds.
Right.
Especially it will give you a more soloistic sound, which I think you need in a piece like this because you're the featured soloist, right? And you want the sound to come out. Uh, Not they have to be louder than everyone, but just clear. All the little fronts and music out.
Joe, we lost your sound again, mate.
Yeah.
No, really? You mean
That's
hear me
better.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, so but basically what I'm saying is like when you plan those different those tuning rods, right? And again, this goes for
Right.
a lot of percussion instruments, bass drum. You know, you're getting like the different and bass drum. You kind of want that. You want like the different colors and get a fat sound. But here we're dealing with a pitch, right?
Mhm.
You can imagine like if you're playing a marimba bar and you play one in the center and one up near the node, you're going to get kind of
Right.
this uneven. The pitch is going to be a little funny. It's same on timpani, so you want to stay kind of within generally those two tuning rods that are like
Mhm.
your playing area. In general, when I know this piece is moving around a lot, so some of you can't. When you're
Yeah.
rolling, you can. When you're on the same drum, you can. So I would generally keep it about 4 inches apart. Um,
Okay.
if I want something like when I play like Mozart or classical repertoire, and I want the sound to be a little more slimmer, I would say, contained, roll even
Mhm.
closer together just to keep it smaller. But opening
Okay.
it up a little bit does make it fatter, and I'm sure that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get like a bigger sound by opening it
Mhm.
up. But I think then it actually winds up fighting each other. You have these different in the drum that are kind of conflicting a little bit,
Okay.
and just
I
keeps
see.
it straighter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, those were the main things. A little bit what I talked about um, before. Um, just always be aware of like, especially in a piece like this where you're moving a lot and you're kind of reaching behind you for the piccolo drum. Just
Right.
whenever you can be in this position with your body in front of the drum, that's ideal. I know you can't always do that,
Mhm.
so don't be afraid to move. Or like on your hopefully your stool swivels around, you can move. Don't be afraid to move your
Right.
body in the position so you can get the best sound. So you're playing from this area and not
Yeah.
from. Or
Right.
sometimes I orchestral excerpt, I see them playing like they're sitting in the middle, like say I'm sitting in the middle of the two drums here and there's a low drum here, and they're playing like this. So one hand is
Mhm.
kind of normal, and the other hand has got like a little like T-Rex motion going on here, where they're just like doing
Yeah.
this, which is kind of funny because one hand is really going for it, the other one's just a little chippy,
Right.
you know. But just proving a
Yeah.
point, just try to always move to where you can, be in the best
Right.
position, and again, moving from one drum to the other, go through it slowly and see where you can think about the rebound of the previous note actually being part of the stroke for the next note.
Okay.
That'll keep especially if you're playing a line, you want to be smooth. Um,
Mhm.
that will help that. Um,
Okay.
especially like faster, more soloistic notes. I'm always thinking about that, using that rebound to my advantage to move
Mhm.
around. Because
Yeah.
it's a big instrument. You're
Right.
physically moving around a lot, covering a lot of area here. Pretty
Mhm.
quick. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's I mean, all of my stick are like based on
Mhm.
that concept. That's the point of this rubber part. Same
Right.
thing on any like kato or any stick that you see that has these. It's about the balance, and it's a counterweight. So when I throw it, even my hand here, it comes right back off. I
Mhm.
need that to be as efficient, meaning I don't have to actually hit the drum and then think about
Mhm.
pulling it back. You
Right.
know what I mean? I don't want to think
Yeah.
about that. Especially playing like we just played, where you have to be fluid and fast. You know,
Mhm.
so you
Right.
want to use all that to your advantage.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Cool. Have you got any questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. It's from my music and page 8. So what would you do to show the difference between the Mikado and then the Staccatissimos?
Let me pull it up. I think
Sure.
um, so. In general, again, here it is. If I apply my if I apply like what I said before
Mhm.
to playing or playing it on any percussion instrument, like if I relate it to other instruments, like what does marcato mean, you know, to another instrument? Like
Mhm.
string players, it's probably like maybe the bow is on the string and they're digging in a little bit more. So
Uh-huh.
it's a heavier sound than staccato. Generally, it's more compact. So that's how I
Mhm.
approach like sounds. And
Right.
this is a good question because I spend now most of my time thinking about these things. I'm like, how can I get this color? How can I get this sound?
Right.
I'm not sitting in my room practicing paradiddles all day. You know what I mean? I'm not like
Mhm.
physically working out. I'm thinking more like, how do I get this sound? And then how can I achieve it through my playing? Like what stroke, what stick first, what stick am I going to use, what stroke type. So marcato, I would think. I have the parking. Let me pull it up. You said it was page 8.
Yeah.
Okay, page 8. So you have these. Yeah, you mean like at the top of the page,
Right.
these wedges? Yeah, I think um, that just in this situation, It's a 5/16 bars generally, with a marcato on the first and third note, so everyone understands what's happening. What I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I think I think the point of that marking, that articulation, is to just make that groove on that rhythm like really strong and make it really clear.
Mhm.
Um, Again, string player, jut, da, 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 da. So it's a heavier note, right? It's almost
Right.
like you're pressing a little bit. I don't I don't think we have to approach the instrument like we always play everything with the same type of stroke all the time. It has to
Right.
vary. You have to have a varying stroke, especially solo repertoire when you're playing soloistic playing. You have to
Mhm.
show these things. So I think it's okay to maybe dig in and leave the stick on the head a little bit longer. That's fine.
Mhm.
Um, Feel a little bit more tension and and less fluidity in your less relaxation in your stroke for those notes
Mhm.
because they're supposed to be really kind of placed. You know what I mean? So
Right.
as opposed to a dot, just a staccato note would just be a lot lighter and off the drum a lot quicker. Where I feel like these have to be really like, think about it like if you were to really put the sound in Pro Tools or something, or in Logic, right, on the computer, and you were to just blow it up and expand the sound of every note. These notes with the wedge would be a really like squared off full block of sound. It wouldn't
Mhm.
be shorter in the space. It wouldn't be a hard attack, which naturally happens when you hit a drum. There's an attack, and then the sound would die naturally, which it does naturally. It would be just
Right.
continuous the long like think of it as like a block of sound. That's what the wedge is.
Okay.
So I feel like it's a little more heavier weight and just really marked. Really
Right.
clear. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's a good thing to think about and making the difference between these different notes. And you have accents, a lot of accents coming up later.
Right.
Of course, that's going to probably be a faster stroke because you want to highlight those notes. You know,
Right. Yeah.
technically, that's what's happening with the stroke. You know,
Okay. Yeah.
varying the stroke is really key to to any instrument, any percussion instrument, um,
Right.
to getting these different sound that you need.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have another questions. It's more like a general question. So that's like a, let's say, measure 19 on my music. That's like a rubato measures. So how would you think about rubato in general, and how would you like what would you think about that?
Well, first thing I think is, wow, that's really cool because I can do whatever I want and I can make it my own piece in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
freedom. You don't have to be stuck into a rhythm. You're not playing with anybody, assuming you're just like able to make it free. But it has to be musically informed, meaning
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason why he chose those notes or chose that rhythm, and then rubato. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to kind of study it like you're the composer in a way and think, okay, why is this rubato? Why are there these pitches? Does it relate to something that I already did, or does it relate
Mm-hmm.
to something that's coming later? Like maybe I can hint at something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I may play it, somebody else may play it, and have a completely different interpretation. They can all be good,
Mm-hmm.
but I would think personally I want to try to make it my own version, which I think is the right way for me to play it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think because it's marked pianissimo with a little hairpin, and then coming after this is a more strict rhythm that you repeat, similar rhythm, and of course similar pitches that you're repeating 3 to 4 times. So it seems like something that's going to be building a little bit. So maybe I would start this on the slower side and then kind of hint at speeding up, and then go to the rhythm that's written out in time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think I would do here, just looking at this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Just to add to chime in here actually as well, I think Joe's right about understanding what the true meaning of what the composer's written in terms of like the rhythmic content, maybe the harmonic content. Because quite often, I don't know about you, Joe, but I find like students see rubato and then they just take the liberty of expanding whatever rubato is to the max. And when you ask them to actually play it rhythmically in time with all the notes, they can't actually do it a lot of the times because it's been so far removed.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think having a clear concept of originally what it is without rubato, and then you can start to like manipulate that a little bit for me.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, and
yeah.
that's a good point. I mean, and again, just to be clear, like I'm totally one of those people that's like, oh, cool, I can do whatever I want. This is awesome. That happens for like 2 seconds, and then I'm like, okay, I got to be responsible. Let's hone it in on what's supposed to really happen. What are they really thinking? It's like a puzzle. Like, what are they really thinking? But it's cool because you can make it grow, you know, kind of fun.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Nice one.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
On time.
Yeah.
Good job, Cheng. All right, we're going to go across to Graham now. Hey, Graham.
Hi.
Hi.
The floor is yours.
All right. I guess just to introduce myself a bit, I just finished my bachelor's at the University of North Texas, and now I'm heading to the Frost School of Music for a master's. And to introduce the piece a little bit that I'll be playing, we'll take a step away from timpani, I suppose. And I kind of wanted to share this one with you for the compositional aspect of it. You've done like a lot of things over your career where you've branched out from like your orchestral playing into different new music groups and composing and stuff. And so this is a piece I played on my recital last year that I sort of arranged, transcribed, composed based on the Glenn Cochie's Monkey Chant multi-percussion setup, but with some other Balinese music, just like the original solo is from. And I guess we can listen to it and hear your thoughts, or if you have any other questions about the process of it, or where it is. It's obviously, if you looked at the scores and stuff, it's very haphazard, kind of like handwritten note style. And I'm kind of curious to develop it further into a more like standalone solo or something a little bit more finished, I suppose.
Great. It's almost. I mean, I know Monkey Chan. I have students that do it every couple of years. Someone does it, and yeah, it's almost like your piece. It's very similar. It can almost be its own separate piece, like stand on its own in a way. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I just, because it's kind of similar. Maybe think about like, do you want it to be the same, or do you want it to be something that's, a little bit different that leads into it, because, like Monkey Chant, it's always building slowly, and it's always like I feel like it's always like holding a certain intensity, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
your piece is also doing the same thing in a way. So it's very similar to me.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, one of the things is just because I was using those same drumming techniques, and then I guess it's just finding like a different musical voice or musical idea with
Yeah,
it, maybe, or like expanding out the techniques a little bit more, I guess.
yeah, I think so. I would just maybe try to distinguish it a little bit more as something different than what you're about to hear. After.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good idea. I think it could be effective. It's just
Sorry, Joe. Graham, are you near a road or something?
Yeah, sorry about that. Is it too
Okay.
much? Okay.
It's
Wh-
quite loud.
What
Yeah.
what actually happened at the beginning of the session? I had to quick dash away from where I was. The Wi-Fi all of a sudden didn't work out. I don't know
Okay.
if you could tell, but I can try like doing more muting and stuff. If
All right.
yeah. But yeah. I mean, playing is really cool and interesting. I also think like compositionally, be careful, especially when you're like trying to present all these really unique and cool sounds that you're doing. If there's too much information coming in, it kind of all blends together, you know. Um,
Yeah, I see what you mean, because it has a lot of like different ideas between the other players and the tracking thing going on at
yeah.
once.
So maybe
Is
the
it?
other players and the track and you trying to do some cool sounds, it's just kind of like they cancel each other out sometimes. I feel like.
Is there any like specific moments in it or anything that you really like grasped onto, liked, or like thought, oh, that should be expanded out more, or like that's a really neat idea that just needs to be more present? Like going along about this so much happening at once.
Um, nothing particular. I think it was all like interesting. Just trying to balance stuff maybe a little more. Like I like there's a spot where like I think it's on the audio where like the voices come in, the chanting on the voices, like I guess maybe it's like an original monkey chant. That's really cool when that just comes in like suddenly and then goes away. Like that's cool because we can like, oh, we hear that, and maybe during that moment you it's not as busy with everyone else, and then as that fades, like you do something interesting, or the players echoing do something interesting, a little that's highlighted a little bit more. You know what I mean, so I guess just finding a balance, Like I'm working on a piece now for it's a big ensemble piece, and it's really hard to, it's hard to basically throw stuff out and be like, you know what, this was really cool and I worked on it a long time, but I'm gonna cut this part out or use it later, find another spot for it, because it's just too much information and it's kind of making things a little bit muddy for what I really want to accomplish here. And just a little soloistic thing, like at the beginning, I would think like in this type of mood you're setting this type of piece, it's kind of like a little bit ritual, right? In a way, you want to kind of set that tone, I think, physically. So like I noticed at the beginning of your video. I mean, I watched it already. I watched it before the other day. I noticed at the very beginning of your piece, right? You just kind of like pick up a mallet and hit something, and then pick up another one and play it. You know, for me, that's like a little bit out of character of I think what you're trying to do with this, the mood of the piece and the feel. So I'm not saying you have to make a big deal about it and pick it up and like really show off that you're hitting it, but like maybe your emotion's not as quick or jerky as the music is implying, this kind of more natural, free-flowing events that like unfold slowly in a way, you know, that holds the
Yeah.
by like how you pick up the mallet, which is the perfect mallet for like that stroke or that instrument, and then you go to another motion. You know, that's a little bit of thing at the beginning I noticed that might kind of set the tone a little bit better.
Yeah, I see what you mean, because it's just a little bit more theatrical or thought out in the motions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
I mean,
the other or
sorry, I even remember how like some people like they have the table for the monkey chant with all the little boxes, and like how they go over there and win, and like how they open them is different. Everybody has a different version of it, you know. Of course, you make it your own, but I think when you're writing, when I'm writing something, it's like I'm considering all of that as like the drama of the piece in a way. You know, how because what we do is very physical. So like, how do I move? Do I move in a certain way that's going to affect the piece, or sometimes it doesn't. But I think in this piece, it definitely could make it way more dramatic if you incorporate that somehow and think about it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, because it is supposed to be sort of bringing in this, you know, foreign drama experience that like now I'm playing on percussion and stuff. The other thing is all the and this was kind of like a discussion I had as I was creating this version of it, was all the actual rhythms and stuff I'm playing are direct transcriptions from like longer works where I just like took, you know, different things that I could actually play just with like one person. And I'm just kind of curious if you've ever like done this sort of composition, how much you choose to like directly transcribe or how much you just like originally create. Because I wasn't really sure how to walk the line between just, you know, okay, I'm using this other music that I learned versus, oh, I'm, you know, kind of throwing out the actual rhythms and stuff out the window and just like going with the idea.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a wrong way. You know, I don't know if I've ever actually done that. Like taking something. Well, yeah. I mean, I actually did it I recently had a piano quartet premiered. Piano, violin, viola, cello, and I just found as I was almost done writing the piece, I found this relationship with Mahler 9 because I just played it, and there's this one spot that I always find really interesting, really kind of dark and mysterious. And when I went back and looked at my piece, I realized, oh, like I'm using similar pitches or similar interval relationships as this part. So I felt this strong urge, like I have to put this quote in the piece, and I did, I kind of had my material, and it kind of the Mahler kind of faded in. The piece is about shadows, like in a distance. So like things you can't really see, but they're there. So it kind of like faded in, and then I did like pretty much direct transcription. I mean, only for those four instruments, I had to arrange a little bit, but the pitches were like exactly Mahler, and all the articulations and dynamics and everything. But then it's very short. It's like 30 seconds, and then it's like dripping, you know, like fades away and like melts away. So I chose to do that, like to keep my piece, the integrity of my piece, but kind of hint, because that's what the piece was about, at this little quote from Mahler, and then it kind of, I changed the pitches a little bit to fit more my structure. So, you know, it's as long as it's like, for me, the structure of my piece is really important, like because you're telling a story basically, like how am I getting from A to B. You know, I don't want to like randomly just throw something in there out of nowhere because I think it's, and that happens to us a lot. We play so many instruments and like, oh, this is a cool sound. I want to use this piece. I want to use this for one note. You know, there's so many percussion concertos where like there's massive setup, and like there's a big cowbell up here, and they play all this stuff, and they hit the cowbell one time, and that's it. It's like, you know,
I can name a concerto like that.
there's a few, but yeah. So, you know, for me, it's like just think about the importance of what you're doing, because you have like a lot of cool material, and you worked hard on this, and the techniques to play it. Like, how can you make it the most effective by kind of trimming some of the fat off and keeping it like clear as
Yeah.
you know where you're going. You know.
Uh-huh. On the idea of structure, I mean, I'm sure you've like done a bunch of different like ways of approaching structure, but do you often think like narratively and actually, you know, like make a narrative story behind it, or what do you find works the most when you just like approach the structure of a piece and how the overall like arc of it should flow?
Um, Not necessarily narrative, working that out beforehand. You know, it happens as I'm writing always. It's like I have like sections things of sounds that I'm excited about, or ideas that I want to work with, and I'll work it out depending on the instrument it's for, and kind of develop it again, maybe get rid of some stuff, redevelop it, and then I have these different sections, and it got kind of like a puzzle. I try to see like, okay, this fits good here because this first part is really what I did here for most of the time in this section. So that's like, okay, maybe that's a little bit of a preemptive moment for what's coming later, and then okay, this is actually a really good beginning, and that ties this stuff together, and this goes in the middle because this ties these two. You know, so for me, it's like I have these chunks of work, and I just kind of see how it fits. And sometimes I don't wind up using some stuff, which is sometimes a little bit upsetting, but also you're relieved because you figured out you get. I feel like this sense of relief, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. It makes sense, you know. So that's generally how I work. I mean, everybody works a little differently, but
Yeah, I mean it's always interesting to hear some people, you know, map out like timestamps of big events and then go back and compose the actual notes, and other people just start from the beginning and try to, you know, flow with it as long as they can. But
yeah,
you know,
and it's all
as I
yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so like it's also good to just let things flow for a while too. Like I'll go and just improvise for a long time, and now with iPhones, I just record myself. Sometimes I'm in the car. Like I wrote a whole trumpet solo. Basically, I sang into my phone on the way home from a rehearsal one day, and it was like 2 minutes, and the piece is like 10 minutes long. But like I know what I meant by like the little things that I sang, just so I don't forget it. Sometimes I go back and I listen to it, and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell that means. I don't know what I just did. Sometimes I write it down, like I go back, I don't even know what it meant. But sometimes I do, and then I just go with it, and you know, sometimes I'll improvise or at the piano, let it go for a while, and then start to get serious about writing something down, um, and then trying to make sense out of it. You know, give it some kind of shape. Then, you know.
Yeah, that's I get, you know, a lot of that's where this came from. But and then the more I listen back to it, and like especially after hearing your thoughts on it, it's just a lot of stuff going on at once and needs to be like thinned out, be more selective with it, I think.
Yeah, and think about. I mean, this could be like a good exercise if you have time. Think about like if you go back and listen to it again. Think about like how many other pieces you could write that are their own thing, stealing from your piece that you just played. You know what I mean? Like you could probably take um, just off the top of my head, just the audio, the electronics, and like take something from that, and it all sounds like. Oh, to me, it sounds like this instrument, and I can make a whole piece, you know, for thunder sheet and timpani or whatever, you know, whatever instrument, just based on those sounds. That could be its whole own thing, you know. You think about it that way, it's like, oh, I have all these ideas, you know, and maybe you can relate them all together in a cohesive way. Maybe there's a way to do it, you know. But I think that's another way to look at it, you know.
Uh-huh. Now you've got my head turning about all the different like things that plug into it that could be their own sort of piece or situation.
Right.
I guess I mean the only other thing with it is there anything just about the performance or the playing that we talked a little bit about just the motions on the sparser sounds or anything, but any of the drumming or that you liked or thought, you know, this would make it better, like just in how I played.
Yeah, no, I mean, playing is fine. I mean, looks really relaxed and comfortable, and the sounds are all really good. It's just that first thing I mentioned where I think you're going for this like really like almost like ritualistic like approach and like kind of laying out this cool exotic sound world, right? That's apparently looks like it's surrounding the audience, which is really cool. But I think just the aura of your presentation could be a little more in that mood. That's all. But yeah, the playing was great. And if you're going to Frost, so you'll work with Svet, which that'll be great, right? I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm pumped about that. I'm pretty nervous for those first few weeks of lessons and stuff, but that's probably a good thing.
yeah, no, it'll be great. I mean, he's great, and I'm sure he'll talk a lot about that, because he's a soloist, and the presence, you know, that you need to bring when you're doing some of this music, and you're playing your own music, so you kind of figure out what you want, like what you want to do for your piece, you know. Yeah.
Do you ever do you feel different when you play your own stuff versus, you know, when you're playing other solos or like orchestral pieces, or do you kind of is it all just one like musical identity, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, for me it's all the same. I don't try to separate, you know. And people definitely try to separate you. I can tell you that firsthand. Like, oh yeah, he's an orchestral guy. He's a timpani player. I even get people who are like, he doesn't even play percussion. He's a timpani player in the LA Phil. It's like, all right, whatever. You can think whatever you want, you know. But I treat it all the same. It's all the same thing, you know. Of course, if I'm performing something, or playing or teaching and playing something for a student in a lesson, I'm trying to sound my best. I'm trying to like do what I do and sound my best. So I don't really separate it. You know, I have a piece that I've been doing recently a lot for solo. It's for bass drum and electronics. There's a YouTube video of the original version that I was on, like the LA Phil new music series COVID version. It was all I recorded it myself and made the video. There's a much shorter version now that I do, and it's like your score. It's all not traditional notation. I should actually someday write it out so other people can play it. But it's basically all improvised. But I even worked it out so that the sounds are really connected to not only to the audio, but also, you know, linearly in the piece from one sound to one technique or one sound to the next. It kind of flows in a way. So it's similar to your piece where it's not really traditional. A lot of it's improvised. So, you know, there's different ways. There's not one way to do it. But my point is I'm treating that the same way I would play two notes in a Beethoven symphony. You know, it's like I'm just being myself and doing what I do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'll have to check out that piece. I haven't seen it, but
yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Great job, Graham.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Joe, that comment earlier was only literally to do with the amount of instruments that was chosen for a certain concerto, nothing else.
Yeah.
For you guys that haven't checked it out, Joe wrote us a concerto like, 4 years ago? 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years now.
Yeah, it's called Threshold. It's on YouTube, I think, now. So you can check it out. But kind of reminded me when you're saying you have lots of like compositional ideas and then you put it together like a puzzle. I remember in the initial stages of writing that was one of the main challenges, was like stitching it all together.
Yeah, especially percussion concerto, because all percussion music, because what we do, we move, you know, assuming we have a big setup, it's not just a marimba solo or a timpani solo, we have a big setup, so like, how are you moving around, especially in concerto, how are you moving around the stage in front of an orchestra? Different setups, and like, physically, how does it work? musically, does it make sense? You know, like that's what my
Yeah.
You play marimba, you play one marimba crazy lick, and you run over and hit a couple tom-toms, and it's like, what's the point of that?
Well, saves going to the gym, I suppose.
Yeah, there's that.
All right. Tomasz.
Hi.
Hi. All right. Do you want to introduce yourself and what you're going to play?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tomasz. I'm from Poland, currently going to my last year of masters already. I've been studying also in Amsterdam with an exchange and in Stuttgart. And today it will be second studie by Johannes Fischer.
Okay. great, great, great performance.
So I think Tomasz has got a few connection issues, but you can still make some comments and then he can watch it back later.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
oh no, he's back.
Yeah, sorry for
Here he
that.
is. Hey, that's
yeah,
all right.
yeah, great performance. Really, really cool piece and very well played. Very thoughtful performance, which I like.
Thanks.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit, like, um, what you were thinking, like, when you approached this piece?
Okay.
Like Vulcan, does it mean cloud?
Yeah, exactly. It's cloud studies. Actually, this piece was inspired by, I believe it was a set of small drawings by some artists. I don't remember right now, but basically it's a study of clouds.
Okay.
So those were paintings, and also there are four main parts. Like first is gray, then basically colors. Third one is dark, which is not a color, but I guess it's similar way. First, what I thought, maybe first thing for me was how to tackle the last part, like even physically, because I knew I have to move somewhere. There were some questions, like I thought about doing it on the ground. I thought first it's easier for me to set up because I need to hang the triangles on the wire to prepare them. So I don't have a stupidly high stance or something.
Yeah.
But also it felt right. I'm not sure how to say it other, and my teacher as well liked it as well.
Yeah.
But I must say I neglected the second part a little bit in my learning process. Especially that I knew, because this recording is from my bachelor exam. I played it last year, and it was basically 2 days after coming back from Amsterdam. So on this exact setup, I played it through like once or something. It was not a good idea. I felt lost quite a lot at the second part, but what I loved about this piece is the amount of colors. And maybe actually talking back about what you told to Graham before, I feel that here is all the space in the world for them.
Yeah.
That's also one of the things that really resonated with me. Like, I like to work with time. I feel it's one of the best tools we have as a percussionist, and I want to be better at it. So I guess that was my main approach. Of course, later just learning this countless hours, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah. Oh, it's really cool, and it's exactly some of the things that I noticed that I would mention. Um, yeah, the second part, I noticed that it was the one that I guess the least. I don't know how to say it. It seemed to be a little bit stuck for a long time. So maybe, oftentimes we play solo repertoire, especially solo repertoire. Sometimes I'd say you have to help the composer a little bit. You know, they write
Yeah.
out the notes, and then the rest is up to you. There's no sound. Like I'm looking at this for now. There's no sound unless somebody does something, right? So we have to make this work somehow. And I'm not saying go and change everything. It was not intended, but again, looking at this, I'm like, how does it relate to the instruments that you have available to hang on? Maybe, a certain instrument. You have like a really nice spring coil that's really, maybe it's very bright, or maybe it's very dark, or maybe it's resonant, or whatever. Heavy, whatever, lighter sound. You kind of use that a little bit, like you have all these handles, and you're slightly to make it work for you, which you think is the best. situation. Also, I felt like dynamically it was all very the same in a way. So maybe find moments where you can space. For me, I think about it as like space. I love the, like what happens in a certain amount of space, whether it's a lot of space or really small space. Like how do I make the color change or the transition from one sound?
Yeah.
I think is really important. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't give you a lot of information dynamically in this part. So I would try maybe to help a little bit by maybe adding a little bit again.
I see. Yeah.
And like, for example, the beginning section is really cool. And I love like all the finger playing. I do this in my pieces sometimes. It's funny, one time my first concerto I wrote, the chamber concerto and the solo piece for Colin Curry, and he came to LA to premiere, and then I had all this really loud scratching on the bongos because it's really amplified on the natural skins, I feel like, as opposed to just a plastic head. And he said, you know, I'm really sorry, and he showed me, he's like, I don't have any nails. Work by maybe playing more on top instead of really digging in like claw. You know, that's what I was hearing. I wrote when I was playing it. But whatever, he made it work. But I really enjoy this sound, and it's different because we're not playing with mallets. We're not using brushes. It's like really natural, kind of primal for me effect. But I like how you in this piece are thinking clearly about connecting the sound to this brush or to the only thing maybe I could say if I'm really picking at something, maybe just decide if you want these Sforzando SFZ notes to be like really shockingly different or within the sound world dynamically of the softer hand. You know?
You think?
What was that?
Which one do you think is a cool option?
Well, I think it should be different just to have contrast, you know?
Yeah. At the time, I was also going for as loud as I can, but at the same time, the limit is that at one point when you hit laying maracas, it strikes back, like you have double sound. So that was my top of the dynamic on the sforzatos in the beginning.
Or not even thinking about it as far as volume. Like I have this volume with the hand, I have this volume with a bundle finger or stick or whatever instrument. Maybe think about it more as color. Sometimes that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like this sound is dark or white noise, and this is just very bright. Doesn't have to be. I'm playing as loud as I can. It's just the way I'm striking, like I'm slapping, even with the finger. I mean, you can't play super loud with a finger, right? Compared to like with a stick.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be drastic dynamically, but color could be different, you know, or more, you know, or people forget about this. SFZ, Sforzando. The literal translation of that word, right? What does that mean in Italian? It means forced, like you're forcing it.
Yeah.
Like the sound does this to your face. Person listening, it's like, whoa, right away. So we see that, and generally we think, oh yeah, it's accent. I just play louder. Okay, good. Yeah, that's like one. I think it's one-dimensional. I think the other dimension is not only is it's louder sound because we're forcing the sound out of the instrument faster. To sonically, it's more like this, right? So I think psychologically it's a different color. So you can think about it this way rather than just like oh, I play soft and I play loud. Done. I'm done. Easy. You know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's more interesting than that, I think. And the thing you mentioned at the end, where you move to the front and the floor, I think that's great. It's a very dramatic effect. But like I mentioned to Graham, it's like, think about like why. What is the reason for that? I mean, besides the fact that stands, you know, you don't have super high stand. Like musically, my movement, I'm moving on part of this. You know, you're a very physical piece. You're surrounded. You're moving a lot. You have different techniques, different mallets, different hand motion. Like, how do I get from this instrument to the tam-tam? I thought maybe the tam-tam could have been a little bit louder. I mean, of course, it's hard to tell through the computer. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean the tam-tam was on the edge. Actually,
Okay.
that was like in the end I started also playing with my hands just to get to push through. Like, of course, with a foot pedal you get up until some point,
Right.
and then I pushed it through. So that one is actually the microphone.
All
But yeah, I thought that the last one, like with going out, one part was that it's the ending of a piece. So that's why I want to move out from where it started. And it's red to faint orange. So I felt that with such a strong colors, I want to do something meaningful. Like, and there's like going out from your instrument. I think it's a big thing. So that's also one of the reasons I chose that. Maybe also like to sit on the floor. Maybe that sounds weird, but I feel that red is like the blue color is lighter. Like before we have part in green and also dark. Like dark is very heavy, but also red is for me also on the down spectrum.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Maybe I was looking for excuses to just sit in front of people. But
I like it a lot. I just think I'm talking about the transition from this like really important like huge event, and then like that happens and like then just go and that's it. I feel like maybe
Okay.
think about that. Maybe it's pushing you in a way to go. Like again, I probably
Yeah.
lost the resonance of what it really sounds like through the computer, of course. It's not like,
Yeah.
but like I would think about like maybe that slight. Also, I felt like maybe it was a little bit short. I know it's written like it said the cello molto accelerando, so maybe
Yeah.
just really fast, and then it sounded to me on the recording just like wow, done, and then I walk away, and that's it. As opposed to like maybe a
Okay.
little bit longer, and it's ringing, and then you go. You know, you start going. I could have used that
Yeah.
maybe a little bit. I think you know
Yeah.
what I mean. That's
Yeah, that's a cool idea. I have to try that out.
yeah. That's all.
Well, thank you.
You got any questions, Tomasz?
Actually, not related to multi-percussion now, maybe. Maybe that's a stupid one, but how important, in your opinion, is actual playing with excerpts versus just listening to them? Like, do you prefer to teach maybe your students or you yourself from back in the day? Like, do you really think playing with the excerpt in ear is very good way to learn an excerpt, or not really?
You mean playing with the recording of the orchestra?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay.
I mean, I personally like I teach and I myself had done when I was a student taking auditions. I would of course spend most of the first times practicing with a score, listening, finding just like we do with contemporary music, like understanding what's happening. Because there's a reason why this music that we play, the standard pieces, the Beethoven and Stravinsky and Bartok and all these big pieces that that are asked all the time in audition. There's a reason why they're asked, because they're good pieces, and everything is like fitting together, in a perfect way almost. So we have to go back and find why is there xylophone part here? Why is there snare drum part? What is the purpose? All this stuff. So I spend a lot of time doing that and thinking about it, maybe taking notes. And then, of course, the next step is working on that technique and, accuracy and technique and all that. And then I always go back and play along, listen to the recording, because it's more fun, honestly. And it proves to me like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it, because it's great music. And it's so great to be playing this music. And I'm part of this bigger, piece of music. It's really great. So yeah, I think always have to do a combination of both. I would also say, you got to be careful when you listen to the recordings. A lot of conductors take tempos that are not always the best for an audition. Sometimes things are just changed a little bit on the orchestra and the acoustic and all that, and the conductor. So you kind of have to just take a lot of recordings and take the average tempo and the average, you have to be careful. I also have my students a lot of time, I say, listen to this Beethoven symphony. You have to go back and listen to the recording again, because it's not sounding right. And do not listen to the timpani player. Listen to how the woodwinds phrase the rhythm. Listen to how the strings play the rhythm. That informs the way we should be playing it most of the time.
Yeah.
Because then when you get a recording, you're getting that player their specific interpretation of the sound. And it may not be really the way to play it, to present it in an audition situation, which is very different.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, certainly listening a lot is really important, I think.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, also, like, developing on this one, what is, in your opinion, also something that we should watch out, like, difference between auditions and just playing on your own, like, the main things, maybe?
Playing auditions versus, like, playing...
Versus just when you're on your own, or like with practicing with recordings, like what to look for an audition of, for example, this Krüger or something like that.
I mean, definitely, you have to just remember that when you're playing alone, you have to recreate the illusion that you are playing with the orchestra, which is really hard to do, so that's again comes from just being really informed on like why your part is what it is and how you fit into the orchestra. It happens a lot. Like timpani, I really feel like it's not meant to be played alone, especially playing like Beethoven. It's really hard to make it sound right and sound good. And oftentimes, you have to play a little bit slower tempo than you would normally play in the orchestra, and it actually sounds better when you play alone. It's very strange. I still don't understand why, but it sounds a lot better when you play a little slower, and it has time to breathe a little bit, and for some reason, we hear the orchestra more than just playing faster tempo or playing what you hear on some recordings, which can be very fast.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, also, you're playing alone, you're playing usually in a big concert hall. It needs time for the sound to develop and be heard, right?
Yeah.
So always thinking about, like, what the sound is out in the audience rather than... We often get, like, kind of stuck in, the sound right here in front of me, what it sounds like. But that doesn't translate, especially in a bigger hall. So it's comes with experience, and as you get older, just learning how to have more presence in your sound. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Great job, Tomasz.
Yeah.
Lovely job. All right. And we're going to go to final one, if that's all right,
Yeah.
Joe. Go to Remy. He's going to play some snare drum for you just to finish
Ooh.
off.
Right.
Hey.
Well, it's very nice to meet you. I'll talk about the piece a little bit. I'm Remy. I'm based in Rhode Island. Teach and do all that stuff. The piece I'm going to be presenting is called Fluid Space, Free Movements for Solo Snare Drum by Kyle Forstoff. The recording is from my second master's recital I presented last May. The reason I picked this piece for that recital is this was the first piece I saw my undergrad professor ever perform, and I just thought it kind of blew my mind when I heard it. And so I was determined to learn it one day, and then I dug out the music one day in my master's and tried to play it, and went and learned it. Yeah.
Great.
Hello?
All right. Let's hear it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, very good. So, snare drum solos, it's cool. I feel like it's always a challenge, to play a snare drum solo in a recital because it's one sound, and you have to not only technically, be strong, which you are. Technically, it's really great. We have all of our students at USC. They all have to play a snare drum solo on the recital, at least one solo, because not only technically, I think it's a good challenge in a recital situation to sell this solo repertoire that's basically again one color. How can you sell that? Imagine it's a snare drum solo is kind of crazy. You tell any other instrumentalist, oh, it's solo for snare drum, they're kind of like, what? What is that?
Definitely.
Think about if you had a big contract and you're a big time soloist and you got your Carnegie Hall debut and you're doing a snare drum solo in Carnegie Hall, what would you do? You say you had to do one. Think about how would you play it, right? You have to. I think you have to think a little bit more. I always say this about snare drum playing. For even playing excerpts, you have to think melodically. You have to have a certain direction, a certain color, a certain sound, rather than again having that one, monotone snare drum clip, right? So I would think melodically, like even a Delacluse solos, like I always make up a melody for some of these rhythms and try it out. You know, it gives it a much more interesting character and personality, I think. They got cadences, like where are their cadences in this piece? There's a lot of them, right? You could find where it sounds like it's like kind of resolving for a second, and then there's a new section. Not just the end of the movement, but within the movements. You know, there's an introduction clearly, and then there's an ending to that introduction, and then development section. Like, where can you kind of bring that out a little bit? He does put the stickings in, because a lot of times I find like sticking on snare drum or all percussion, it kind of can inform melodically a little bit what's happening. You know.
Sure.
You can think about that sometimes, but it seems like he indicates for the whole piece. There was one, oh yeah, this moment here, I guess it's page 6, on the second line. When you have a lot of fast stuff and you come out of it, on the second line you just have these simple dotted quarter notes. You know,
Yep.
with a wedge, accent, line. I might take. You can take a. I mean, I've talked about this theory a little bit, but you can sometimes take a little bit of liberties to kind of help the composer in a way, or help the piece. Or maybe
Sure.
here, I don't know the piece that well, but maybe here, I might make this a little more dramatic because there's time to breathe a little bit here. You know.
Sure.
Because you don't want the whole piece to sound like choppy and like you know, popcorn in the microwave the whole time. You know what I mean by that? Like, it's just pop.
Yeah.
You have this moment here in the second line where it's like you're playing something fast and then the tension kind of releases a little bit, where you can maybe, you know, ba, where it slows down subtly. Maybe.
Sure. Yeah,
You know?
I understand. I think I moved. I didn't think to move in that direction because so much of the piece there's a lot of quintuplets and sevens and mixed meter and sort of blurring of the beat that I thought, like, when it has the beat, like, so clearly that you're just playing dotted quarter notes or something so obviously on the beat, I thought it would be better to keep that, like, rigidly in time so the audience can have a way to center themselves, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, again, I don't know the piece as well as you do. I'm just a point of just feel free to, like, take these subtle liberties to bring out certain things, you know, and then
let it breathe.
If you feel like that's a way of, like, solidifying or making something clear, then definitely do what you did. You know, but I find a lot of times people feel like they have to stick to the page 100%, and again, it's a guide for, ultimately the composer wants a really exciting, great performance, like the one you were originally inspired by, right? So the player, your teacher, whoever played it, you know, was like, obviously everybody's different than what you did, and it's cool that there's these different interpretations, and hopefully they're all amazing and great. So you just make it your own, and if it means you play slightly different than what you teacher did or what you heard from somebody else did, that's fine, you know. I mean, it's all written, it's like in black and white, it's inscribed, like that's definitive, but it really isn't, because everyone has different hands, different abilities, and you can kind of make it your own in a way.
Sure.
To me, that's the most important, like your own, you know, with anything.
Definitely.
Even I'm playing, you know, again, Beethoven Symphony for the 10 millionth time, if I'm doing it, you know, and still, like, this time I'm playing it, it's different than last time, and I'm seeing it a little bit differently now because it's different time. You know, I'm older, or I have different sticks now than I would use then, or whatever it may be. A lot of factors, different conductor, different person sitting next to me playing trumpet, whatever. You know, it's like those things all affect what we do, and it's okay that it's different. It doesn't always have to be the same way, is my point.
Sure. I guess I did have a question, sort of more in the general way, because and earlier we were talking about, and throughout this session, you were talking about like getting different colors out of what we do, and finding the sound. And I guess with this piece, I played around with different heads and snares and sticks to we all do. And I guess sitting here now, I'm thinking, and in that moment, I was thinking, or I guess my question is, how is it just experience in terms of if I took this piece, how do I know what to adjust, or do you adjust anything at all when you change spaces? Is that like how do you approach a different space? Do you think, all right, like what do you look for to know what you need to adjust, or do you try to just have the conductor indicate you, or is it better to have someone else in the room to give some indication what might need to be tweaked depending on the space?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go too overboard with that because you could go crazy, and like I'm still like adjusting in my hall, which I've been here now like 15 years. I'm still like always adjusting and slightly tweaking stuff. So like if I go on tour, if we play a concert somewhere, I'm not gonna try to completely change everything unless there's a certain halls, like famous halls around the world that I know have a certain acoustic that I have to really make a big change. Like they're like the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam is like really live and it's beautiful and you don't have to force at all. And Vienna too, the Musikverein, it's like you don't have to force. Carnegie Hall's like that. So those things, those and you bring a certain amount of knowledge and okay, I changed the mallets and I maybe play a little bit lighter. But yeah, I mean, like for snare drum, for example, I mean, the main thing is like, is the drum clear? Like, are the snares too wet? That's like the main thing with snare, right?
Sure.
So you can quickly adjust that. But I mean, as far as instruments and trying stuff, it's like, these days, like everybody, at least in the U.S., you probably know, like everybody has the same snare drum, or the same Pearl symphonic snare drums, right? They're like super
more or less.
clear. They're super clear. They're easy to play. I mean, I don't play snare drum regularly all the time. The only times I play snare drum these days professionally is like music stuff, which there's not a lot of snare drum, or in the movie studios, like I play snare drum more than I play anywhere else. So it's like, but I don't play regularly, and like I get them on those Pearl drums, and it's like so easy to play. They're just like super clear, super responsive. So maybe like I'm thinking for me, like if I'm playing solo recital snare drum solo, I'm gonna probably find a drum with a little more character that has like something else going on, some character in there, rather than just like the safe, really clean option. That's super dry. I mean, it's fine to use a drum like that, but I would think about maybe like trying something different that you normally wouldn't get to use, something a little more fun, a little more character to it.
Sure. Yeah. Do you? I guess. Yeah. I guess in speaking of character, because interestingly enough, about the week before I put on this performance, I was in a master class with Adam Papa talking about like snare drum pieces of tape, and he had the point of like he brought up the point of like snare drum solos nowadays need tape in a way, like sort of like as you were talking about, snare drum can get really monotone, and having some sort of tape or some other sort of effect on it kind of heightens that, I guess, the interesting factor or the audience factor, like some stuff that draws them in. And I guess I was wondering what your opinion is, because I think I find that I'm more of a traditionalist. I enjoy the sort of like uniqueness that we make music on one sound, and we can do the same thing that other instrumentalists can do with pitch, without, or less pitch material, I guess. And I just wondered what your opinion would be.
I mean, I don't have a strong opinion of it. I think it can go either way as long as the playing is interesting, and of course the technical aspects are there. That has to be there. But first, so you can actually do what you intend to do. But then, yeah, I mean, again, for me, it's like just thinking more melodically. Like if we want a snare drum or a performance of a snare drum solo to be accepted as like any other instrument, it has to have that kind of melodic direction to it, right? It can't just be like one sound, like when we were ear training in college and like ear training class, and they had that book where like you're just tapping out rhythms and clapping it. there's no like rhythmical character. You're just playing. They want to make sure you understand rhythm and you're playing in the right place, right? But
Sure.
snare drum could be that, or not. It could be more interesting where you are getting different colors, you are getting other sounds. I mean, and my snare, I don't know if you're aware, I wrote a snare drum solo. It was for the modern snare drum competition, the one that used to be in Atlanta, now it's in Cleveland. And I actually wrote like harmonics in my piece, like rim shots and like different tensions, and flipping the stick off the head, like getting these different overtones. So there's a lot of colors in there. We just gotta be curious and keep searching for them. And people like Gene and Casey, they're coming up with like cool ways to notate it and actually and how to perform it and how to approach it with sticks and balance and all that, and door stoppers and on the stick and all that. So there's different ways to play the drum, fingers and everything. So yeah, I mean, adding electronics is just adding another layer of sound, which is cool. But you could also get the same effect without it. I think if you're really working at it, working to be curious and working to develop these sounds a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess with because this piece was written and talking with my teacher who wrote it, written in the sort of a mix of the American, Swiss, French rudimental style. And I guess coming from that rudimental side, would you, in your opinion, finding melodic material, or thinking, I guess I'm thinking finding a melodic material for something more rudimental might be more of a challenge than something more classical?
Well, I mean, I've always liked rudimental style in general, and I think people forget about the fact that it's really supposed to groove, right?
Sure.
And it's in a way it's more fun because there's all these subtle inflections where like say you have like the flam taps or even paradiddles. Like it doesn't need to necessarily be like concert, like Delacluse concert music, we'll call it, where everything has to sound like it's really even and precise. In a way, like rudimental, usually you have the flam with the accent and you have a bounce. Let's say it's really simple. That doesn't have to sound like brap bop, like it's all equal. It can have a little bit of a feel of brap bop, like a rebound. So I think in rudimental, and like the Tompkins solos, like which have really complicated from the French style rhythms that are also influenced by rudimental. The accents are kind of like phrasing points, like everything's like being thrown off from the accent in a way. I think you can think about it that way as far as rudimental. So there's the groove of the accents, and then you can phrase the accents, like kind of like Bach. You can take the accents and make a line out of the accents, and all the filler notes, the double, the bounces, or the notes in between the accents are kind of connecting to the next accent, or they're falling off from the accent, falling away. You can have all those subtle inflections in there, but I've always loved rudimental music because again, it really has it should have a strong groove to it, as opposed to being more about it being super even and super clean, super even as far as the notes speaking all the same.
Sure, it's less of a sort of like a terrace or a plateau. It either is or isn't accented. It's somewhere in between. I never thought of it like comparing it to Bach like that, but that's something I'm going to think about for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. You got any further questions, Remy? You got time if you want to.
I don't really think so. I think those are the main ones I wanted to ask about. I mean, a lot of the other questions I had kind of got brought up earlier, which is
Yeah. No worries. Okay. Anyone backstage want to come back on just for a couple more questions, or shall we call it a day? Let's see anyone. Joe, I think we're going to let you go, buddy.
All right.
I guess it's time for some Korean barbecue or something.
Lunchtime.
What's for lunch?
Actually, some curry, I think.
Oh, nice. So are you at Disney Hall now?
I'm
Or are
in
you
my
at home?
room, which is kind of a mess now because we're actually all at this Hollywood Bowl in the summer, but here to do some work.
Hold that thought. I should probably end the stream. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Tomorrow night, we've got double bill. Pius Chung, Erico Daimo, 5 p.m. UTC till 10 p.m. UTC. So looking forward to that.